Evening BookTube, welcome to Jack's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it is that time of year, the middle of the year, where we talk about how we are doing on our reading. And so I've already done kind of a talk about my stats, and I say it like that because it's not really stats. It's just like some numbers of how much I've read of certain things, and which genres basically just help numbers of, because I wanted to try to read more of other genres other than fantasy, because fantasy is my go-to genre. So I am doing okay with that. I still am reading a lot of fantasy, but the other part of that goal was I wanted to read more adult fantasy too, so that's going pretty well too. I mean that's going okay as well. There are a lot adult fantasy books I'm getting into more, but I will talk about that a little bit more in a minute because that kind of answers one of the questions on on the tag I'm about to do. And I did the book mid-year freakout tag, the other day, and then so now I'm going to do the book mid-year check-in tag, which is a little different and asks different variations of those questions, but it's kind of the same idea of, checking up on your reading and talking about how your reading is going, but like I said, the questions are a little different. Okay, so question number 1. How many books have you read this year? So at the time of mid-year, June, it was 50 or 51, but I just finished a book. I think it was yesterday. I think as of yesterday, I finished another book. So now I'm up to 52 books, and my goal is 100 books this year. But I think next year I might change it, because there are so many big books that take forever to read that I want to read. So maybe if I lessen my goal to 5 or 1 book, or be one of those people who does one book reading goal, or at least do what I did my first time I did the Goodreads, which is only like 5 books. Of course, I only did that because there were only a few months before the end of the year, and that was around the time we were moving, so I was staying with my grandmother because she was in the next state over from the state we were moving to, and it was just easier for me and our dogs to go to my grandma's and stay there while my parents continued to show the house, and then eventually, hopefully we would move. I mean, I was getting very anxious around that time because I was worried, I was like freaking out because I didn't want to leave. I liked how we were still pretty close to my sister physically or proximity wise, and I have two of my best friends lived there in the same state as me at the time, but I did not like that area, so I was very nervous that it wasn't going to happen, because we kept getting, we got rid 3 times. People were like, no, we changed our mind, we're not gonna, it didn't work out, 3 times. I think I was just as upset as my mom and dad were about it, because I was so afraid I went into being stuck in that town, and that was the last thing I wanted. But it all worked out. But anyway, I didn't have all my books with me at the time. I only had a handful of books with me, and then I did buy some other books at that time. So a lot of the books on my Goodreads at the end of 2016 were either books I just bought at that time, or books from my personal collection that I had. And some of them I even, at this point, have gotten rid of, like the Relic Master. I was, all set to read that, and I ended up getting rid of it. I don't know why, I just kind of lost interest in it, so I ended up donating it. At the time, but, I mean, there's a tiny bit of me, I saw a copy of the book at Gibbons, and every so often there's a little thought that creases my head and thinks, oh, maybe I should give it another chance and rebuy it. But by the time I go there again, it will probably be gone by now. I mean, I hope. Because, I mean, I think when I did my little book haul about books that they were given to me from there, because the reason why, I kind of explained the reason why she was giving them to me is because they were not selling at their store. And I feel, and like I said, I don't want her to get rid of them, but she doesn't have a clientele for those books, it seems like. But anyway, so, let's go ahead and get to question 2 now. What's your favorite book of the year so far? And I picked 2. When I did the mid-year freakout tag, I picked 1 because that tag also had this question. But this year I decided to pick 2 this time. And funnily enough, neither one of them is fantasy. And you'll understand why I find that funny in a little bit. But, well, although I guess you might still understand now because I have said that fantasy is my go-to genre. But Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And that one, it took me a while to find that at My Books A Million. I kept asking, because that's the problem with My Books A Million. It's a smaller store, so it's not going to have everything that I want. I mean, it definitely has a better selection than, like, the charity bookstore or even the country bookstore. And that's not, I mean, it's not their fault. I mean, the country bookstore is an independent bookstore, so it's small, and the charity bookstore gets donated books, and most people in this community do not necessarily read the books that I really am passionate about. But I finally had found the paperback edition, but I really wanted the hardback edition with the cover that has the skull. It's black with the skull on the cover, the skull from Hamlet. If you're familiar with Hamlet, there's the scene where he's kind of slowly, the main character Hamlet is slowly going crazy, and at one point he's talking to the skull of I think his father's skull, if I remember correctly. Like he digs out of the grave or something. I don't remember it that well, but I think it's his father's skull that he's speaking to, and I think that's when he does the famous speech, "To be or not to be," that most people know. But it has that skull on the cover of If We Were Villains because the story is about theater students, and it's compared to Donna Tartt's what is it called? I cannot believe I can think of it. Something history. There's history in the title. I cannot think. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. The title. But it's going to be compared to that as being similar because someone gets murdered. It's about a group of students. You have this narrator who's very naive and impressionable and is, although he's not as naive in If We Were Villains as the narrator is in the other book, I feel like. But he's part of this group of friends who are, they're very arrogant and overly confident in themselves and pompous. And in this case, in that one, the Donna Tartt book, it's Greek. And this one, it's theater, particularly Shakespeare. And there's lots of drama between the group and the group of friends, and then one of them eventually gets murdered. And it's basically our narrators telling the story of what really happened and what led to the one member of the group to get murdered, why they were murdered. In this case, people are led to believe it's our narrator who committed the murder, but he won't, but the detective in the story is suspicious about it. He doesn't necessarily believe anymore that this kid was the murderer. And so he finally decides to go talk to the kid and to hear the story, and that's when our story takes off. And like I said, it's revolved around Shakespeare, and as someone who became a thespian in high school and who loves theater, even though I kind of get frustrated with Shakespeare and have a hard, and the only way I can read it is if I'm reading it in in an academic setting with my peers, and my teachers and a teacher goes over it. It was very special to me because I kind of on some level understand these kids and appreciate them. Of course, I don't live life as dramatically as they do, and I'm not as arrogant or as vain as they are, and I'm not as selfish as they are, and I'm not someone who would live that dramatically. But I could appreciate it and understand it on some level. And then the other one, Crime and Punishment, is a Russian classic about a man who he's a young man, a student, and he has dropped out of school because he didn't do that well, and he is now in a situation where he's very poor financially. He's not doing that great, to the point of where he becomes so desperate he decides that he needs to rob someone and kill them to get money so he will no longer be in debt. In the beginning of the book, the first part is him pondering this and trying to figure out how to go through with this without getting caught. And then eventually by the end, he actually succeeds and kills the person, but now he's worried about getting caught. Like, the weight of the guilt is on him, and but on the other hand, he feels justified in his actions, and he has this kind of superiority complex going on. And then meanwhile, he's also dealing with personal problems, not just his own, but his sister has two guys that are after her, want to marry her, and they blackmail her to get her. And she feels like she has no choice and has to marry one of them. But her brother is like, that is not going to happen. So he's trying to help her with that. But both guys show up in their lives and try to continue to blackmail her into the situation. This was such a good book. So I was so engaged in the story. As I said in the mid-year freakout tag when I talked about this book, I just wanted to know what was going to happen. I wanted to know, is the main character is he going to get caught? Is he going to finally confess? Or maybe he's not going to get caught. How are things going to work out for him, for his sister? And there was another little part of the plot where his best friend fell in love with the sister too, and wanted to marry. I was wondering, are they going to get together as well? Are they going to get together? Or, is this going to end badly for these people? Or is it going to... and I was also very conflicted because I know morally this guy murdered someone. He robbed them, and then he robbed this woman and murdered her. So he murdered her. That's not committed a crime. He killed this woman. And at the same time, a small part of me was kind of rooting for him. Because I wanted to, in some twisted way, I kind of understood. I mean, he was in this desperate situation and he couldn't see any other way out of it. And he commits this horrible, monstrous thing in the process. And of course, the author, I feel like the author made you biased by putting it from his perspective. You saw his point of view. And I think a lot of times, a book, when it's from the point of view, not always, sometimes it's just not enough. But, I was just watching a video where they were talking about the book You, which is from the perspective of a stalker. He's stalking this woman. And normally you're thinking, oh, that this guy is psychotic. He's stalking this woman, But yet, from what I've heard of reviews, but with the fact that's from his perspective, you kind of on some level sympathize with him or kind of understand him at least. And I feel like that's what Crime and Punishment did. It helps you kind of sympathize and understand why Raskolnikov murdered this woman. And yes, it's horrible and it's wrong. It was not the best way to go, but you like I said, because you were in his point of view of the situation, you were inside his head. You kind of, scarily enough, you understood it. Of course, it's not as scary as the book You. Not that I know from reading it, but it's about a stalker. But anyway, it was just so good, so well written, and it was actually an easy read. Which, actually, this book is the answer for another question on this tag that I will get to in a minute. For like all the reasons I said I love this book. I love this classic. So, those are the two. The next one, question number 3. And again, this is kind of a more specific way of saying the question on question number 5 of mid-year freakout tag. It's basically the same question, just phrased differently, which is, what's the most disappointing book you've read this year? And in this case, I decided to pick a different one. In that, when I did the freakout tag, I said Handmaid's Tale. In this case, though, I am saying the Grace Flynn Chronicles. This was, I shouldn't have been surprised because it's a book I got from the convention, and a lot of times those books, so far in my experience, have not been like wow for me. They haven't been great. But this book was kind of, first of all, it was really, the first 2 books, I still have one other book, and then the author's collection of poetry. But it was first of all, I was disappointed that it was really short, that not a lot going in. It was basically an excerpt, it felt like an excerpt from a story, from a bigger story. It was shorter, it felt like it was shorter than novella, the first 2 books. Now, the third book is a little bit longer. The first book is a prequel. And the first one begins the actual story of, the character Grace. And then the second one I've not read, and it is a little bit longer, so maybe that would be better. But I just wasn't as interested. The character's kind of cool and everything, but she was just generic. She kind of felt like, she kind of reminded me of Selena. A lot of arrogant and cocky, badass fighter. Still vulnerable, of course, but, she reminded me of Selena. And I'm talking about Selena from Throne of Glass. It was just, first of all, like I said, I was disappointed that it was so short. And it just, like I said, it felt like it was just an excerpt from a bigger story. It was decently written, although there were some typos. It was independently published, so maybe that's why there were typos. I feel bad because I want the author to succeed. I always want authors to succeed. As someone who would love to be an author someday, would love to write a book someday. I have to write the book, though, and, actually write a first draft. But that has not happened. But like I said, I wanted him to succeed, but it just wasn't, it was like, where it's missing something. It felt incomplete. It was fun. It was quick. A good way to finish out that. It was a good book. It was a good 2 books, actually, to finish out the year, to add to my number of books I read that month. Not that it's about quantity. It should not be about quantity. It should be about quality. But, as I've said before, I like the feeling of accomplishment. That's why I make these ambitious goals, because I like seeing what I've read, how much I've read. It makes me feel good that I am capable of reading that much. But anyway, so yeah, the Grace Flynn Chronicles so far has been very disappointing. But I'm gonna read the last one, and then I'm gonna read his collection of poetry. But I already donated the first 2 books. I just went ahead and donated them. Okay, so number 4, what genre have you read the most? Now, this is the one I mentioned for question number 2, where I talked about my favorites and how neither one of them were fantasy, because I still managed to read, fantasy still managed to be the genre I read the most of. I say that like it's a surprise, but it's really not. It's my go-to genre. I read fantasy all the time. I'm most passionate about fantasy. I'm most comfortable in that. I most enjoy fantasy. Not that I don't enjoy other genres. I do, and I want to continue to read other genres and expand myself. Especially, I want to read sci-fi. I'm slow. I've been like inching along with the sci-fi. Like I've only read a few sci-fi books so far this year. I am still determined to read Leviathan Wakes. Maybe I should bring that one when we go to Virginia. But of course, there's a lot of sci-fi that I want to bring with me. I mean, fantasy that I want to bring with me. And then there's other sci-fi I wanted, and I'm still thinking about. That one, the Constellation trilogy, Defy the Stars, Defy Earth, I think, is one of them. I still want to get to those, and it's a good thing I decided not to go for a run because I think I can hear thunder. Which it is right on time because it's said 6:45 and it's 6:48. So, but anyway, so yeah, I still, even though my favorites this year so far this year are 2 non-fantasy books. Fantasy still the genre I've read the most of. Name a new favorite author that you have discovered this year. So, I was kind of struggling with this one. Because, I mean, a lot of the books I've read that are favorites or I really enjoyed were books that, I'm already familiar with the author and I love the author, like Stephen King and Brandon Sanderson, and Robin Hobb. So I was trying to pick ones that I didn't, that I haven't already started enjoying. So first I said, not one specific author, but a culture of authors, if that makes sense. Basically Russian authors. I'm really intrigued by Russian authors. So far I started reading War and Peace, and it's kind of in a format similar to Crime and Punishment, and I just love Crime and Punishment. I mean, it could also just happen to be the story itself. It doesn't necessarily, but I do like the writing style. I like how it's set up. Both of them kind of set it up the same way, and so far both stories I've been intrigued by, engaged by. But War and Peace is a long book. It's not as short as Crime and Punishment. Although for some, Crime and Punishment is not that short, because it's still a pretty chunky book. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by Russian authors. Of course, I've only read Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, so I haven't gone beyond those two yet. And there is Russian literature that I've heard about that I'm intrigued by. And then the other ones I picked Signe Pike. I really loved The Lost Queen. I liked the writing. I was definitely engaged in the story. I'm very intrigued with this world that she's created based on actual history. And I've always been a fan of authors who take actual history and then put a fantastical spin on it. I always like that idea. I said J. Kristoff, although that one I'm not sure about. But I did like Nevernight, and I liked his writing style. I mean, I haven't, but I don't know, because I started to read his other one, the one he wrote with Amy Kaufman. Not the one that just came out, but the trilogy, the Lost in Space type trilogy. The Absinio Gemina, and I can't remember what the first one was called. I read that, I didn't like, but I think that was more about not necessarily him, but the writing style, and I didn't know how to read it, and that kind of, like, I can read, like, different forms when it's, like, texting and emails and stuff like that, but this one had pictures, and the whole book was all that, and I didn't like that. It was hard for me to really read it. I mean, I can read it, but it was just hard for me to get into when it was that format. So, but I liked Nevernight and how he wrote Nevernight. Kind of reminds me of, and then I also said Scott Lynch. I really liked his writing as well, but It's a bit risky because, like, all three of those authors I've only read, well, all of them actually, the Russian authors as well, I've only read one book by them, and I feel like you can't know for sure going by just one book by that author. That does not necessarily mean you like it, just means you are engaged in that story. So, yes, I was buying Dawn Tartt's books, and I said that she was a favorite author, and the same thing with Neil Gaiman and Brandon Sanderson. Although Brandon Sanderson, I've read his other 3 books, and I like what I've read so far, Way of Kings. But it's just, and Neil Gaiman, he's another one that I've read more than one book by him. So, those are a little bit better, but still, I feel like it's still a little unfair for me to say pick a favorite, but I wanted to give an answer to the question, so next is, what's the most surprising book you've read this year? And I mentioned this one when I talked about my favorites of this year. I kind of referred to this question when I mentioned Crime and Punishment, because Crime and Punishment is my most surprisingly good this year. I wasn't sure if I was gonna love it. It was again another one of those situations where I started reading it because of like, oh, I want to, I heard it's great and I want to show that I can read something like this because it's a classic. It's not an American or British classic, it's a Russian classic. But I actually was intrigued by it. I was actually engaged in the story and was so eager to keep reading it to find out what was going to happen for this character and to just keep going. So I was kind of surprised because it was a slow start for me, but I got so into it. And I had so many questions. I wanted to know what was going to happen to these characters, how things were going to work out, like I said in the previous question. So yeah, I'm surprised I ended up loving, and this is one of my favorite books. Okay, so next, what are your favorite and most anticipated release of 2019? I feel like you can't really say one are your favorite. I mean, I guess favorite is who's your favorite author, and that I don't know. I feel like you can't that part of the question, but okay, so when I answered the similar question to this on the Freak Out tag, I said Winds of Winter. Well, this time I have another one. I actually have another one. The Starless Sea by Erin Morganstern. Like everybody else, just fell in love with The Night Circus. I love the writing, and I am a romantic, and I don't like romance novels normally. I love the atmosphere that was created and the idea of the competition, and I understand the criticism it receives, and I want to reread it to see if I still love it or maybe I agree with everybody else. I am worried that because I've been heavily influenced by BookTube, I might start to see the flaws a little too much, or I might start to only say I don't like it because, I'm trying to get rid of a book, or every BookTubers I like say this book, so I'm like, oh my god, they're right. But either way, I want to reread it. And this was before, Grace, I loved it before I even discovered BookTube. I don't even remember when I read it, but I read it way before BookTube. Way before we even moved. And then all of a sudden, years later, I joined BookTube and it becomes popular. I find it then actually is a well-loved book. So she finally has written another book, The Starless Sea. And I am so excited. I want to read it. And I also want to read there's The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton, which I bought. And then another one of my favorite historical fiction authors, Diane Sutterfield, finally published a new book. I can't remember what it's called, but everyone's thinking buying that book, and I want to read that one as well. My issue is, I just work in the customer service. I work in a grocery store, so I don't make a lot of money. So it's just, and I've always bought paperback books because they're cheaper, and mass market paperbacks are, as I've said in previous videos, they're easy to carry around. So I'm at war with myself to say, okay, do I get the hardback book and spend the $20 to $30 on the hardback, or do I wait for paperback? And with series, it's even more difficult because, yes, I say I don't normally care. I'm not as, like, oh, and my books have to all be matching in a series, but I still am debating myself. Do I just wait and get the series when it's in paperback, or do I get, like, that's been happening with Kingdom of Ash. Now, granted, I am not, and I almost bought it yesterday. But my mom before told me, she was like, okay, just don't buy, don't go all out with your spending. Because I had already bought a whole bunch of clothes and work shoes. And then I decided not to go to Bath and Body Works to buy lotion and body wash. So I decided, I'm not going to get any mass market. I'm going to just get mass market paperbacks. And I did see Kingdom of Ash. For cheap. How they have the clearance section, and sometimes the books that aren't selling, I think they make those clearance books so they can put more books on the shelf. So they had Kingdom of Ash there on the clearance section for $5.79 or $75 or something. I don't. So it was actually really cheap. It was like almost $6. So it's like, what do I do? Should I, I was like, shouldn't I buy it? And then my excuse always is, well, let me get to Empire Storms first, and then I'll buy it. And then there's also the excuse of, well, should I wait for a mass market? Should I wait for paperback edition, or should I? And then part of me almost is saying, well, I should just buy it, so that my copy of, Tower of Dawn will have a matching book, like, as in, I know they look nothing alike, but one of Tower of Dawn is hardback. My copy of Tower of Dawn is hardback. Like, oh, maybe I should get Kingdom of Ash in hardback. So I don't, so yeah, I almost bought it yesterday, but then I didn't want to buy too many. I wanted to limit myself to at least 3 books. So that was one of those situations, like, okay, do I buy it, or do I wait? I'm still waiting. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so yeah, I was talking about anticipated releases. So I basically answered that question. So Winds of Winter, Starless Sea, those are the ones that haven't come out yet, and there were releases that I haven't, and that I mentioned releases I hadn't got to yet. They already came out. They're not anticipated. They're already out. Okay, so next question. That was question number 7. Question number 8. What's your next big priority for reading this year? There are a lot of series. First of all, I want to progress a lot. Get most of the Witcher series read, if I don't get it all read, before the fall. Before autumn. It's just so hard not to say fall. Like, I don't know if you watch, but I've said in previous videos that I don't like saying fall. I like the word autumn better, but I've always said fall, so it's kind of hard having to break. But autumn, I think the Witcher TV series is going to be released, so I want to get most of the books from the series read. So first I have to read 2 books that are short stories, and then I can get to the actual series. So I'm currently reading Sword of Destiny. Once I get that done, I can start reading the series. And one of my top priorities, and that is, I want to get that done before the autumn, or at least get most of it read. And they don't look that long. They don't look that chunky. So hopefully I can, at least, like I said, at least most of it. I don't have to if I don't get it all done before autumn, that's fine. It's not. But I don't want what happened with Song of Ice and Fire to happen, where, like, I got into the TV series, but because the books were so long, it was easier for me to just go ahead and watch the series rather than read the books. But now that the series is over, I need to get it back into the books. Let's see what else. There's a lot of other series, like, I finally gave in, I finally surrendered and bought the first book in the Mealtime series. So I want to read that one. I want to start reading that one, and that's one that I'm already thinking, oh, I should bring it when we do Virginia and start that one. And then I want to finish book 1 of Way of King. I don't know what the actual series is called, The Way of Kings. And then I want to get Wise Man's Theorem done. Although, like everybody else, I'm thinking, oh, maybe we should wait until we know for sure when the third and final book comes out. I just love the first one. But I have heard one of my favorite booktubers, Murphy Napier, has read the series, and she was not happy with the second book. Not that she's reading God or anything, but let's face it, I get influenced by some of my favorite booktubers, and she is one of my favorite booktubers. Either way, I'm gonna read it. So that's another one that I need to read. And then, let's see. And I finally read The Demon King, so now I can read the second book. And then let's see. What's another major series? There's quite a few. I need to get this book read because I want to finally be able to get back to my sister. And I might not get it read. Hopefully, I need to get it read at least before November because she's going to be coming for Thanksgiving. This year we got them for Thanksgiving. Last year they came for Christmas, so this year they're coming for Thanksgiving while they go to her husband's family for Christmas this year. That's how they fairly share their time with our family and his family. They, like, with the major holidays, every other holiday we get them, they come here, and then the other holiday they will go to his family's house. So that way the kids will have a fair time with both sets of grandparents and both their aunts and their uncle. I guess I don't have a brother, except for, although my cousin Jordan's like a brother. But anyway, so there's that. I want to get to an Empire of Storms. There's quite a few books that I want to, like Voyager as well, and I need to read John Anna's biography by David McCullough because that's also is my brother-in-law's book, so I need to get that done. Although he has not, every time I tell him that I will eventually read and give it back to you, he's like, well, no rush, I don't have the desire to read it right now. And then I want to read 7076, but like I said, as I've said before, nonfiction, sometimes the writing style can be dry, and I'm not eager to read it. Yes, I like the topic, but I'm not eager to read about the topic always. Yes, I'm interested, but it's like a lot of facts and stuff. And then I want to get into R.A. Salvatore, because if you watched my charity book haul, I had got a lot of R.A. Salvatore books, and I got some Raymond E. Feist books. He's a fan. I think he's an older fantasy author. I got his all four of the books from the Rift War saga, although I think there's more. So I want to get into those. And then I want to finally read some Ken Follett. I have like 2 of his major series. So I want to get into him as well. There's so many books I've bought from I've gotten into since I moved here that I want to get into, but like some of them, it's because they're physical size. Like, it's not easy to travel with them. And then, it's so easy for me to jump on the fantasy bandwagon. So it's a bit of a struggle, but there's a lot of books I want to get to. And I want to continue with reading more of certain other genres other than fantasy. Like, I need to read more sci-fi and horror. Those are my 2 top horrors. And then, here's another major priority is my Stephen King project. I've barely read any Stephen King. I've only finished 1 Stephen King book this year, I think. Well, I think 1. My problem, as I've said in the past, my problem I think is I started with The Stand. And it's a chunker. It's an epic. So it would take me a while. And so I need to start small with and then the only one of Stephen King's that I have actually read is one that I started a while back and I needed to finish it. So I just went ahead and started it all over again after I bought it. And then I ended up, by the way, I don't think I have anymore. Yeah, it's one of the Stephen King books that I was like, yeah, I liked it. Everything was good and interesting, but it's not my favorite Stephen King book. So I ended up donating it. So I need to read, even if it's Gunslinger, which I've already read once, I don't remember it, so it's like I'm reading it all over again. But I might bring Misery with me when we go to visit my sister, because this is one she bought for me. So it's like I almost feel like, oh, I have to show her I'm reading it. Not that it matters, because I mean, it's not like she ever says anything. No one ever says anything to me. You know, when I say, oh, I'm reading a book you bought me, see? Look. I mean, no, they don't notice that. So, I mean, maybe they do, I don't know. Like I said, they never say anything to me. So, I have a lot of books I need to get to. Okay, so question number 9. The last question I'm going to answer, because question number 10 is tag some people. I don't really tag. I've only tagged like once or twice. Okay, so last question is what's been your bookish highlight of the year so far? Okay, so my bookish highlight is getting, like, first of all, the one other day, getting all those fantasy books for free was really awesome. Well, as a gift, I should say, because I don't want people to think that, oh, I got these for free. But yeah, getting them as a gift because I had made friends with the woman that kind of runs this, you know, the library and the bookshop. Which, it's funny, I felt like when there were these customers that were asking me, and I think the woman was a librarian, the wife, and they were asking me, and I felt like, okay, I have to explain to them, well, I got these because, you know, I'm friends with one of the people that owned it, so it was kind of a gift, although I wonder if I phrased it in a way that made me sound, well, I'm special, so I got these books for free, which I didn't mean it like that, but sometimes I'm worried that, ooh, what if it came off that way? But they were just asking me how it works in the bookstore. So I should have just explained to them that I didn't need to tell them that. I should have just been like, it's basically donated books for really cheap prices. You know, I could just do that, which I did. But I started with sorry. That was my iTouch. I knocked it off because I have it plugged into my laptop. So I should have just said that, but I didn't. I chose to explain, okay, that's why I have a whole bunch of books. Like, why it looks like I'm buying, like, 30 books. Because it was actually, I was given these books for free, and, you know, it's like, but, like I said, I didn't explain to them, well, no, it's donated books, the most expensive book is, like, $4 or $5, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, and I mentioned where the library was and all that. So maybe they didn't think the way I thought it would come off as. I hope not. But so that was great. So, and then like which meant I got all these R.A. Salvatore books. I started reading R.A. Salvatore. I want to start reading R.A. Salvatore because I heard years ago that he's a great fantasy writer. You should check him out. It was really awesome finishing Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. That was great. I finally finished that one, and I also finished the Dragon Rider Chronicles by Nicole Conway this year. That made me feel really good. That was a highlight. I was able to finally finish those. Finally say, I finished Mistborn! Although it's only the first era, so there's more to read in the Mistborn story. I finished Royal Assassin. I gotta read Assassin's Quest. I'm thinking about that might be the book I read for Medieval-a-thon, because you're supposed to read a book about assassin. Unless I can get away with counting the fact that in Way of Kings, not Way of Kings, I keep saying Way of Kings, what I mean is Kings of the Wild, that one has an assassin main character, but she's not the central character. But she's a major character in the story. So if I could count that, then maybe I'm good. Because I don't think I'll finish reading Royal Assassin. Especially, But anyway, and let's see what else. Let's see, what's another? It's nice that it's always nice when I can see how many books I've read this year, how many books I've completed for my Goodreads goal. I was very happy that I finished the Bane Chronicles finally, and now I've started Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. And there were books that I put off buying for so long, and I finally bought them, which was basically, well, it's really only one. I talk about it like there's more than one, but really, well, actually, no, I think there's two. I finally bought the sequel to Morgan Crow, the Trials of Morgan Crow, The Calling of Morgan Crow. I finally bought it, and then I also finally bought Lord of Shadows. So I felt very proud of myself that I finally bought them. I don't know why. I know small part of it is like, still me feeling insecure that, again, I'm buying, this 30-year-old is buying YA books and middle grade books for herself. And again, with my face, I look like a teenager. So I think that's why I get so insecure about that, and I care so much about that. So that's, I think, why sometimes it takes me so long to buy some of the and also I moved on from Cassandra Clare. I want to get back into her, and I'm slowly doing that. But I haven't really fallen in love with her all over again yet. And it's really hard when you hear criticisms about these authors that you used to love, and then realizing they're not perfect. The stories have a lot of flaws. And then also, of course, I've heard some things about her as an author, how she interacts with fans, and she's not the nicest person to her fans. Of course, I don't care about her as a person. I care about her stories, and if she's a good author. That's how I see it. It's like, I know it's like people, when you find out this person is a horrible person, a horrible human being, then you're like, I don't want to give this person money. I don't want to help make this person rich and help them succeed in their career. You're a little bitter and resentful because they're an asshole a lot of times. But as Ellie Brooks said, they're only human. And yes, we do have our limits, and there's things that, why should we support this? Why should we give this person money? Because they're this way, because they're a bigot, or they're sexist, or they're racist, or whatever. But I don't buy them because I like the person. I buy these books because they sound good. They sound like my kind of story. I love the story. I don't care about these people as a person. Same thing with the acting. Like, I like their acting. I don't care about who they are as a person. If they are, that's a plus, a bonus if they are a great person and I like their personality. Because especially when if you are like me and develop crushes on actors. But with that being said, a lot of times, it's still, it's hard to avoid. Even though I'm all sounding all self-righteous and being like, I don't care who they are as a person, I just like their books. It still gets into my head when I hear negative things about them, and I still feel like, I hate that I love this person, and I still want to buy their books, but when, they feel this way about this, I shouldn't support them. But then, it's like, if I could just get used copies of their books. Maybe not at the charity bookstore, because that has a limited selection. But, an used copy on Amazon. Or, I could sign up. Well, I can't really, but I could sign up for some of those websites that are big giant book warehouses where you could get certain books, used copies of books. So I could get an used edition. I don't have to get a hardback of every book I love, every author's work. So, there are ways around it. You can still buy the book without giving them too much money. And you could always not get the money at all. I could always just go to the library. So there are ways. I happen to choose, and it should be my decision if I choose to buy this author's works. but it does get inside your head, and you do think about you wonder what are other people thinking, and I can't help but go to that place where I'm thinking, oh, well, you can do what you want, but I don't get why would you do this? How dare you support that? So I can't tell you to your face that, oh, I am, you can do what you want to do, but really I'm thinking, how dare you? How dare you support this author because they are this or this? Sorry. I always think about this. I think about this stuff all the time. It just drives me crazy. So I have strong feelings on it. So anyway, I guess I don't really have any more bookish highlights to talk about. Like I said, I like what I've accomplished so far. It's nice to be able to say I've accomplished some series, and there were books that I've been reading for a long time I finally actually finished. Not because they were like 500 plus books, but just because, I'm a mood reader. I've come to realize since I've joined BookTube, and sometimes I move on. My taste will change, and even if a part of me still likes that type of book or that author's that story or whatever, I'm not as in love with it as I was before. So it's like, if I want to get back into it, it takes me a little longer to do that. So there have been a lot of books that I've put off, like Cassandra Clare's books. So anyway, so that is my bookish check-in tag. If you want to do this one, then feel free to do it. If you want to do both, the freak out tag and the check-in tag, you can do that as well. Although it is kind of the same questions, just different variations of those questions. And if you liked my video, please give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!